Steve Burgos, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good,
Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You are the director of Boise Public Works.
I am.
Thank you for coming in today.
Yeah.
You and I got this lined up a few weeks back, and then as fortune would have it, I got to see your presentation at one of the downtown centers this last week. I was like, oh my God, I'm having you on.
Fortuitous. yeah, fortuitous.
It was like Thursday. I'm like, I'm meeting you again next Tuesday, which is fantastic. The presentation, obviously I was going around on this water tour that was really fantastic, seeing a bunch of different drainage canals, watering canals, spring areas. But your presentation really stopped me because ultimately the way people engage, at least people that I've spoken with, engage fueling and dealing with municipalities is like we have inputs and we have waste. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like the inputs are going to be electricity, they're going to be water, they're going to be food, they're going to be all, and that's what the organism needs to keep, like breathing. And then we're going to get a stream of waste out of that. And your presentation around the concept of like, what if we didn't view this as waste? What if we just viewed this as another input for another system and we got valuable things out of it? That blew me away. And to understand that you guys have an actual process where you have essentially like almost a net zero waste from the waste stream coming out of Boise currently, not like hypothetically, but it's like, no, this is what we currently do. That I went home, like, first off, I ran up to you right after. I was like, I'm Matt, this is wild. And then I, went home and told my wife, as I usually am like, honey, you're not going to believe what I learned today. Yeah. It's wild to me. Talk to me about the system that you have in place to deal with the just raw waste that you have kind of reclassified as like just raw inputs coming out of the city of Boise.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me.
I know that's a big question, but
yeah. And it's been a journey. I mean, it doesn't start overnight. And I think it comes with just like a shift in attitudes. So we probably about 7-8 years ago, we used to call the facilities wastewater treatment plants. And if you really start to think about what's happening at the facilities, we get all the used water from across the city. We get all the industry. We get restaurants. We get folks taking showers, using the bathroom in the morning. It all comes to us. And we were realizing we were using the biosolids, which is what you think it is. There's a liquid stream and a solid stream. So the biosolids on the right, liquid stream on the left. We were realizing that hardly any of this is going to any waste, right? So we set about 7 years ago, just reframing who we are, what we're about, because our perspective is words matter. So we were calling it a wastewater treatment plant, which implies that it's the water equivalent of a landfill, and it is anything but that. We take the water, we treat it to a really high level, we put that back in the Boise River. We take out the solids, we basically digest them. We have these huge digesters that are almost like stomachs, and they digest the solids. Then we take that out to a farm that we own and operate, 4,300 acre farm, where we grow local crops for dairies. We put wheat on the global market. We also pull out something called struvite. So let's say you have a Coca-Cola over lunch. There's a lot of phosphorus in that Coca-Cola. You pass it, you give it to us, and then we have this thing called struvite. There's a reactor on the site that converts that phosphorus back into a usable fertilizer. And we're only one of maybe, 16, 20 facilities nationwide that have struvite capabilities. So in effect, the only thing that we're sending to the landfill is a little bit at the beginning, like rocks and stuff that come down into the system and get into the facilities. That's about the only thing we landfill. And so for us, it's just there's no waste. It's all a product that we're trying to beneficially reuse somewhere in the system. So it's you can think of it as a big circular economy, right? And so for us, it's kind of just how we do things.
Okay. So you, in 60 seconds, summed up and glossed over like 1,000 questions that I have. So we're going to just thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you don't mind, I would really like to understand more. So first off, let's just talk about say my house. Mm-hmm. I'm on septic, but let's say I was plugged into the Boise district municipal system. Mm-hmm. All right. So I have showers, I have, bathroom, the whole bit. It all comes at, I have my kitchen sink, the garbage disposal, the whole thing, right? Or, all of that goes down into one pipe. So you're like, hey, we have two streams. It all starts with one big pipe,
That's
right?
One
Okay,
pipe.
so this one pipe that aggregates all of the waste, and it's not stormwater, right?
Nope.
That's a different pipe.
Different pipe,
great.
different system. Yeah, this is just the wastewater coming from houses.
So these are pipes connected to houses, connected to industry. So like if Micron has wastewater, it goes down this drain, not mixing with stormwater. All of this giant pipe of industrial and human reality comes at you. So you get this pipe of reality. What do you do at that point?
So we have about 1,000 miles of pipe underneath the city of Boise where we move our product from point A to point B, with point B being one of two what we call water renewal facilities. So we get the product, we pipe it in, and then it starts into a process at the facilities where we're taking, you can think of it as like we're cramming nature that would typically take months to break something down. We're doing it about an 8-hour window. So we're taking all kinds of natural processes. We have all kinds of bugs that we grow that help to eat some of the waste.
Wait. Yeah. You have a section of the first stop where you have like a bunch of bugs. Are we talking like flies? Are we talking
no. Little tiny little microorganisms. Yeah.
And you essentially you maintain this ecosystem where you're like, hey guys, you stay in your little container over there, and we're just going to keep feeding you. And they're like, great.
Yeah. In fact, we do it in a way that we kind of like starve them for a bit and get them hungry, and then we feed them, and then we have them kind of die off, and we collect them as part of the solids. Yeah. So it's basically a biological treatment process is what it boils down to.
Okay, so the first stop is this. What did you call the plant?
So the first stop is the water renewal facility.
Water renewal facility.
And the very first stop is the headworks.
Okay.
It's where we take out the big stuff.
Okay.
So we have stuff that gets in we have, there can be big chunks of wood. There can be, dead animals. There can be all kinds of stuff that we have to screen out at the beginning, get the bigger stuff out. And
like
then
if somebody flushes a mouse or something, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then we go into the next stage is a primary clarification. So that meaning we send the water into these big basins and we just kind of let stuff settle out and then go to the bottom. And then we collect what comes out of the bottom, and that becomes part of our first set of biosolids.
Okay. So you first have the giant screen, get rid of the mouse, get rid of the wood.
Yep.
Okay. Then you go to the original stop, which is, hey, Bugville. Right?
Not Bugville yet.
Oh.
Yeah. We're clarifying and getting all the other kind of like larger pieces out slowly. And then we go into Bugville, which is our aeration basins.
Okay, so first mechanical filtration, right? Then you go to separating the solids drop.
Yep.
Everybody stays calm. Like I have a fish tank, right?
Yep.
And every time we clean it, it's like dump more water and everything's a mess. And then slowly the solids drop and the water clears up. Okay, great. So then you can separate the stuff on the bottom from the stuff on the top.
Yep.
Okay.
And so the stuff on the top now still has stuff like phosphorus in it. And it has nitrogen and different types of chemicals in the water that we need something other than we could chemically treat it, but that's not necessarily environmentally friendly. So we have these bugs that do the work for us. And so we have a bunch of microorganisms, these huge aeration basins, and we keep them hungry. They eat the phosphorus, and then we kind of slough them off. They die, and then we collect them, and that's part of our biosolids as well.
Gotcha. So they separate themselves out.
as well.
Once I did for fish tanks, I've very frequently done a homemade CO2 reactor, right? So you got to put yeast and water, sugar and stuff into it. And like those guys go in there, they make all the CO2. It gets pumped into my fish tank, which is great. And then they eventually die off and fall to the bottom.
Similar concepts.
Gotcha.
But
on a gigantic scale. Okay. So that's what you're doing with the liquids, right? So you take the liquids, you put the microorganisms in, you keep them hungry. They do their thing. They eventually die off. They self-separate, right? Because they go to like really fine sediment at the bottom.
Yeah. There's a secondary clarifiers, another set of clarifiers.
Gotcha.
And they settle out.
Okay.
And then once we get the water separated out, we've collected all the solids that have settled down in the bottom of the tanks, and we move that to the digesters. The water then goes to ultraviolet filtration.
And is it water or is it liquid at this point? Because that's a distinction, right?
It's water at this point. You would recognize it as pretty clean and clear.
Okay.
And then we go into our ultraviolet disinfection.
Gotcha.
And so there's where anything that's remaining, if there's any bacteria thing, we'll zap with ultraviolet light.
Right.
And then we put it in the Boise River.
Okay. At what point in this process, somebody got really concerned. I put a little 6-7 second video giving information about this whole big process, right? This is right after the presentation. I was really impressed. Somebody said, yeah, but what about all the like medications, right? Like people take medications and, that comes out in their system, or, it's at times there, a friend of mine said that his doctor recommended he just flush some of his prescription medications. At what point in the process is like, the Vicodin, picked up?
Yeah, it can go and it can be a little bit still remaining in very, very, very low concentrations in the water. But most of it we get into the biosolids. And so we'll do testing of our biosolids. A lot of that'll break down in the digesters. But we still have, like when we do testing out at the farm, we'll have microscopic concentrations of things like Vicodin or other, we call them endocrine disruptors. But they're very low concentrations, and they tend to break down once they're in the soil.
Gotcha.
So they tend to be not long-term issues. They break down, but we do. I mean, anything that you take, we get, right?
Gotcha.
So vitamins, it can be Vicodin, it could be all kinds of things that we get from the community, and we got to figure out where to put it.
So it sounds like you're saying they're susceptible to getting broken down like a lot of other things. Yep. So they either get hammered in the first digester or they break apart once they hit the soil.
That's right.
And then obviously I would presume the product of the farm, it's like you guys would test that. It's like, no, it's not corn with a side of Vicodin. It's just whatever.
Yeah. We do a crazy amount of data collection just to make sure that we are absolutely sure what we're putting on the ground, and we're tracking kind of how things end up. Where, is there any fate in transport? We do a ton of testing out at the farm.
Gotcha. And I forgot to ask, when you have the first mechanical filtration, where do you do like with the wood and the mouse that got flushed?
So that's when we were talking earlier about most of these facilities are almost zero waste. That waste that we pull off the screens, that's what has to go to the landfill, because we really don't have a place for that to go. So of all the things that we collect, we collect at the water renewal facilities, everything gets recycled except for that first step, what we pull off of the headworks.
Gotcha. And again, that's not really like biological matter coming from people. That's like it could be wood or somebody's wedding ring. Unfortunately,
we've found lots of interesting things.
Do you send the valuables to the dump?
We have actually had we've had staff. We'll have panic calls. Right. And we've had staff where it's convenient, they'll go and look in the system. And we've actually recovered some things for folks.
Holy cow. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, it's pretty
wild. You have, when that big craze with the flushable baby wipes was coming through, did you guys have just the giant gears that got gummed up? Because you have real robust, like original mechanical, breakdowns.
Yeah. Flushable wipes bad. Please don't flush them. Because we've had the pumps get gummed up, but we also have things that can. You may have heard about Fatbergs. So the giant, they're huge, right? Fats, oils, and grease can glom onto those flushable wipes, and they can create these huge obstructions in our system. Like not great. I think London it was like the size of a bus.
Yeah. And they have to physically remove it, right? Because it's not something like you can, because those flushable wipes are like fibrous, and then it's like fat and everything, like hair and everything gets mangled together, and it becomes.
It's not great. It's not great. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So bottom line is you go through the initial screening, then you separate. You send your your solids to the left, you send your liquids to the right. The liquids go through a digesting process with the
solids go through the digestion.
Solids go through digestion. Okay, so the liquids go through the little microorganisms.
Yeah, the
UV microorganisms. A lot of stuff breaks down, and then by the end of that process, with bacteria being destroyed and the inappropriate concentrations of, what do the microorganisms eat?
So the microorganisms usually, they're either focused on nitrogen or phosphorus. Is usually in those big tanks, because we have pretty stringent limits that we can't discharge above certain numbers on ammonia and total phosphorus into the Boise River.
Gotcha.
Because the river can only take so much of those substances. So we have every town up and down the river has a certain amount that they can put in and no more. So we have a concentration and a mass limit is what we call it at the end
Gotcha.
of our pipes that we want to make sure we're meeting.
So that's what the microorganisms are going after.
Yep.
They're going after nitrate. They're going after phosphorus. They break that stuff down into a natural process. They die off. You separate them out. Then you run the remaining liquid through UV sterilizer, kill anything living, and then you discharge into the Boise River.
You got it.
Gotcha.
That's basically it.
And the whole scare on E. coli recently is like, listen, pretty much every year you get to the end of the season and you have some E. coli issues. That's not like a Boise Public Works thing.
No. And in fact, it's hard at times because we have geese up and down the river, and they like to leave stuff behind. We'll put it that way. So we have every once in a while we'll have fish.
Fish.
Yeah.
It's like that scene from Moana, like fish peeing you all day. Like the Boise River. It's like you have a lot worse things than the water coming out of the Boise Public Works in there, man.
And we'll have we had those big rain events, right? So those rain events are a big flush for the system. If we haven't had rain for 3 months, 2 months, all that builds up. We have a big flush of the system, and it goes mostly untreated to the Boise River. So that's not great.
So it's whatever's in the streets.
Whatever's in the streets, parking lots, etc. Yeah. But we're getting better at the requirement now is to have retain on site. You have swales and stuff. You'll see them around gas stations or parking lots. It's getting better, but we still have the legacy system that was built, over the last 100 years.
What's a swale?
A swale is like a bioswale is like you'll see a grassy area in a development or gas station where the stormwater goes right into this grassy area and it filters down through the groundwater. So it gets some treatment as you're going down through the ground.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Instead of going directly into a pipe that goes directly to the Boise River.
There's one of those over near the clubhouse here that they built a volleyball court out of. I was like, that's the catch basin for all the nasty.
It is. Yeah. And there's actually
I'm not playing in that sand.
It's becoming a more popular, like they're trying to figure out like that's acreage we could use for something. And so apparently in this case, they're using it for a volleyball court.
God bless them. Anyhow,
what you gotta do.
Okay, so again, E. coli, and the E. coli, even if there was E. coli in the liquids that you're dealing with, that's what the whole UV sterilization is for, right? Like those lights, they essentially, again, from my fish tank, I had a UV sterilizer because I had this algae bloom years ago, and the UV sterilizer like explodes the cell walls, kills viruses, things of that nature. So then the water itself has nothing else living in it.
That's right. Yeah, it gets into the DNA. It basically explodes the cells.
God, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool technology.
Okay, so that's the liquids. Let's go back to the first, like we're separating out the solids. Sure. We got the liquid that way. Talk to me about what you do once you've separated the initial liquid versus solid filtration.
So we take the solids and we have, like at West Boise is the larger of our two water renewal facilities. We have, I think it's 3 digesters out there now. And we let the solids sit in the digesters to break down. And then they'll come out as kind of like almost like a soil. And then we take those biosolids, we dewater them, we try to get them as light as possible. And then as the city of Boise, we're one of only a handful of cities that own their own farm. So we own a 4,300 acre farm south of town.
20 miles south of town.
20 miles south of town. Yeah.
The 20-mile farm.
20-mile farm, yeah.
A lot of creativity in the Boise Public Works.
Yeah. So guilty, yes. So then we take the solids out there and we land apply the solids. So it's a farming operation, but in effect, like formally, it's a biosolids application facility. Because remember, we took out all that phosphorus, we took out all that nitrogen, and we're taking that fertilizer out to the farm for a very clear purpose. We want the crops to uptake that phosphorus and nitrogen. We don't want that in the system. So the farm is really, it's a big scientific.
It's like a giant digester round 5 or something.
Right. So we're land applying all the biosolids at a certain rate, agronomic rate for the uptake from the different crops that we're growing. And that's what we do with the phosphorus and the nitrogen. So they go back in the system either as wheat, right, to the global market, or we grow different types of products for dairies. So it goes to cows for milk production. So all of it is very circular, right? None of it's going to waste, and we're using all that fertilizer that we're all producing for something beneficial, as opposed to just putting it in the landfill.
Okay. First off, what crops do you grow out there?
We grow all kinds of different crops. So we grow, I mentioned wheat, we grow triticale, we grow alfalfa. We turn some of that into, we have corn out there, we turn into silage. So yeah, we have any number of crops. They'll change year to year.
Sure.
But pretty consistently alfalfa, wheat. Those are the big crops, yeah.
Okay. And with this process, so you're land applying it, and it's essentially just like, look, we have this remaining product that's valuable, right? Like people purchase fertilizer, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is not anything new. And then you sell the end product, right? So like the whole cost of all of like the transportation, all this stuff, you would have had to put it somewhere, but because you put it in here and you actually produce something that has a market value, you end up selling it, and then that makes like essentially a revenue neutral process, right?
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
It depends on the crop year. Sometimes we'll have a good year. Sometimes we'll have not as good a year. But if we have a really good year, we're close to revenue neutral. Yeah. So we don't really have any cost for managing our biosolids. And biosolids management can be one of the most expensive portions of a wastewater facility, or a utility rather.
Okay, say you didn't have the farm. What's the end run for that biological solid then?
Most cities will landfill it. So you're paying the transportation cost to the landfill, and then you're paying the tip fees at the landfill for them to take it. So yeah, it becomes a pretty significant cost center. And so we have this solution. And it wasn't me. This was 1994. We had folks at the city that were visionaries, and they saw this as an opportunity. And so they bought the farm, and we've been expanding it ever since. But those folks had a vision for something that was really different, which is pretty cool.
That is wild. Did they get the model from some other place? Like, because 94 that's a long time ago.
Yeah, and a lot of cities do land application, but they typically do it with a contract farmer. And so they have this product, and the contract farmer says, I'll take the biosolids off your hands and I'll use it on my farm. For the city of Boise, we wanted to make sure that we had a little more control over the biosolids looking out into the future. We felt like we could long-term make this revenue neutral. So that's kind of the direction they went back then. It's kind of cool.
Speaking of farming, Nampa, I believe, I had Mayor Kling on, and she was discussing their agriculture watering system. That she was like, listen, we process our waste liquids and get them to the point, not just where we could discharge them into, the Boise River, but we actually get them to the point where they can become pressurized irrigation, right? So like you get it to a really, really high quality cleanliness. Yep. You guys are discharging your liquids into the Boise River. Like, what's the relationship between, one, the quality of that discharge, and two, like, if it's analogous, is there any way that you could just, instead of putting it back into how much do you put into the river on a daily basis?
We put in on average about 30 million gallons a day.
How many acre feet is that?
Oh, wow. Now you're challenging me on that one. I'd have to get back to you on that, Matt.
There's got to be a way.
There's a way to, we could quickly convert it.
You said 30 million gallons?
30 million gallons a day.
That's a lot of gallons.
That's a lot of water.
Okay. Yeah. So, like, what's the quality of that water compared to, like, pressurized irrigation?
Sure.
I'm looking this up. Hang on a
It's
second.
very, very high quality water. And what they're doing in Nampa is really cool. They're doing some really innovative work on, they're recycling their used water for irrigation purposes. We're starting a recycled water program southeast of town for industrial use purposes. And so Nampa is doing some really neat work with their recycled water. The difference in water quality is just a slight bit higher in Nampa than what we're putting in the Boise River, but not much. What we'll be producing at our recycled water facility that we're proposing to bring online is going to be basically drinking water quality. What they're doing in Nampa is a Class A recycled water, so it's a little less lower quality than drinking water, but really clean water though.
Okay, here's the thing.
Yeah,
roughly 300,000 gallons of water are in 1 acre foot. If you're doing 30 million, that means you're doing 100 acre feet of water per day. 365 days in a year, which means you could be pumping out 36,000 acre feet of potentially irrigation water if people wanted it. Yep. That's a huge amount of water.
And that's something we're looking at in the future. So right now, the price point for water in the valley, I'd have to go back and look at the rental pool. We ran numbers that suggest it's not there yet for us to take our West Boise and our Lander Street treated water to a Class A standard and put it in a canal yet. It's likely coming, and so we're thinking about that in the future. But we're starting our recycled water program with a brand new facility in the Southeast. And so we'll start experimenting there with recycled water. In the case of Nampa, I know they were doing it in part because they were trying to solve some regulatory challenges they had on Indian Creek, where they were being required to treat to certain levels, and it was pretty spendy.
Gotcha.
So they pivoted and said, well, why don't we beneficially reuse this water?
So it still has to come back to economic viability.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, because if you think about, and again, I don't know all the stats on Anderson Ranch, but they raised, I mean, we're doing these incredible, reservoir systems and water retention systems that are, saving like 40,000 gallons or 40,000 acre feet or 50,000 acre feet on an annual basis. There's got to be a world where it's like, hey, man, we have 35,000 acre feet just in Boise, right? Like somebody just has to pay the bill for it.
And that's where I think the partnerships can start happening, right? So one of the things that we talk a lot about in Boise is trying to figure out, historically, agricultural interest and city interest and commercial interest have seemed like they're in tension and competition with one another. It's a finite resource. There's only so much. You don't produce more water, right? So the more that we can start thinking about this as a finite resource and thinking about partnering rather than arguing over this stuff, I think we're going to be much better off in the future. So for us, like we have conversations with our irrigator friends, and we're starting to build those relationships such that we can have an educated conversation about recycled water. We can talk about recharge and what does that mean for the Treasure Valley. So I think, from my perspective, we're in a really good spot in the Treasure Valley because we're talking more about what's possible in the future with these different partners, as opposed to not talking and potentially getting to a point where we're going to be arguing and fighting over water in the future. There's a lot more conversations, dialogues happening now than we've ever had in the past.
We're already fighting over water.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not like the fight is not, it's like it's already here, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a huge train wreck.
Yeah.
If you started, here's a question for you. This is kind of funny.
Okay.
If you started using your 35,000 acre feet of water for irrigation, instead of putting it in the Boise River, would that cause a problem with people that are using the Boise River for like hydropower? Like, would Idaho Power be like, hey, wait a minute, you can't take that water. We were using that.
A lot of that water comes back around though, right? So on the Boise River, in the summertime, we divert about, I'm going to say it's like 80% of the river goes to irrigation.
Sure.
But a lot of that water comes back through the drains on the very far end of the river. So it's almost like you have higher flow on the upper end. There's the diversions, you get a little bit lower flow, and then the water starts coming back and you start getting that flow back.
Back to the flow back. Yeah.
So
minus evaporation and incidental recharge and things of that nature.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, if you're dumping the 30 million gallons a day, then like there's somebody downstream from you who's like, yeah, man, they just took away 30 million gallons a day.
Yeah.
Like somebody's going to be not happy about that.
Yeah, and that's where the water rights questions, a lot of those are unresolved.
That's my question. Like, what's prior appropriations for wastewater treatment? Or excuse me. Like
cities,
treated water, whatever.
Yeah, and cities have certain rights in the state of Idaho. One of them, we're allowed to use our used water to extinction is the phrase, the legal phrase. And so most cities feel like we have fairly stable ground from which we can start developing our recycled water programs. If they go to irrigation, that's one possibility. If they go to recharge, but I think for me the bigger picture is that we're making better decisions for the broader community, better water decisions for the broader community. So, for example, we're going to start doing recycled water in the Southeast here in the next 4 to 5 years. That's water that basically...
When you say recycled water, what do you mean?
Sure. We mean we're going to treat water to a really high level, and we're going to reuse it in our community as opposed to putting it in the Boise River and letting it go downstream.
What part of the community?
So the part of the community we're going to start with is in the Southeast.
No. When you say we're going to reuse it in the community, does that mean the industrial users in the community? Does it mean my tap in my house?
It means currently we're going to start with industrial users.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which means, in effect, there'll be more water available for the tap at your house. Right.
Because currently, if Micron is like, hey, we need 1 million gallons of water for whatever it is Micron does. I don't know what Micron does, but they're like, we need this. They're like, oh, go to the hose, big hose. turn that bad boy on. That takes pressure off of my tap in my kitchen, right? And so what you guys were doing, because I also saw those like the shipping container different filtration systems, right? So essentially what that's going to do is like, no, we can use this wastewater. We can deliver the 1 million gallons to Micron because they don't need drinking water quality stuff. Like nobody's sticking their cup into the thing. Like they're just and that means the water pressure on your kitchen faucet doesn't decrease when they turn on the 1 million gallons.
Yeah, relatively speaking, we're adding, so like, think of it almost like a circular economy out there in the Southeast. They'll give us their water, we treat it to a high level and give it back, right? And so you create a loop there. That means there's less pressure on the water system outside of that area, right? To your point, they don't need to divert more water from the Boise River. They don't need to pull more water out of the aquifer. We're just going to kind of keep reusing that water out in the Southeast.
Do you know how many times a certain gallon, like if you have 100 gallons that get used by Micron, okay, so they're like virgin water, 100 gallons.
Yep.
They use it, they dump it down the drain. You guys grab it, you send it through the filtration system. Do you know how much water would eventually be able to be shipped back to them?
That's a good question. I want to say the efficiency that we tested at the pilot that you toured, I want to say it was like 75 to 80% we can get back. That would be then going back to Micron. So we can get a really high percentage of that water recovered, and then what's left over is called our basically our concentrate, the reverse osmosis concentrate, and that's what we're still figuring out. What do we want to do with that particular waste stream? Now,
mind you, that's just concentrated waste that was coming out of the waste stream anyway.
That's
so
right.
It's not like you made new waste. No. It's like no. This just goes back into a waste system of some sort.
Yep.
So if you have 80% efficiency, then you literally have 100 gallons of virgin water going in. Then it's 80, then it's 64, and then it's like 51.2 or something, and you go down. So your half-life just for 100 gallons, where you only have 50 gallons left, is like 3 or 4 uses. That's wild.
Yeah, so there'll be augmentation that's required, but it'll be less than it would have been otherwise, right?
Right.
If they gave us, if we put 100%, currently how it works is Micron discharges to our system. All the users, the industrial users, commercial users, discharge to our system. We treat it to a high level, only to put it in the river, and it basically goes away.
Right.
So one of our ideas is like, how do we keep this incredibly valuable resource local? Keep water local. And that seems to have resonated with a lot of Boiseans. Like, that seems to make sense. Why don't we try to reuse this as many times as we can? Let's get as much out of every drop as possible.
Now, if I were a cynic, and I'm not, I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, hit me.
If I were a cynic, I would say, hey, let's say Micron has 1 million gallons per day allowance per the state. Okay. They're like, you can only have 1 million. They're like, all right, fine. They start getting recycled water from you. They're like, yeah, but you gave us 1 million gallons of like virgin water. This is our water that we were, essentially putting back in. So we should actually get more than the 1 million gallons because we got 800,000 gallons from, this recycled process. So now we actually want 1.8 million gallons. Because again, who owns this?
Yeah.
Right. And like, does this count against their water right? Right. Like that's this big question of, wait, you've just invented something valuable out of nothing. How does that fit into our existing framework of how much water is distributed to each person?
And that's one of the key questions we have moving forward. And that's what we're talking with Micron about. Like, how do we navigate this together? And they've been really good to work with. And just trying to figure out how, water rights are really difficult to deal with in the state. They can be. So navigating that water rights system while still wanting to have economic development, while still wanting to protect the resource, these are all these things we're trying to balance at this point. And so we're hopeful that a recycled water program is the start of doing something a little bit different. The other thing that's really interesting about recycled water is the system that we're building out there. Like if you were at the one of our classic typical water renewal facilities, huge tanks, huge concrete tanks. What we're going to be doing out in the Southeast is building like really advanced technology where it's going to be mostly skid mounted, right? So the idea that we can pivot quickly to add new capacity. So let's say because we have recycled water, there's another company that's really interested in locating close to the Winco distribution center in the Southeast, right? We can say, okay, well, how much treatment capacity do you need? And they say, I don't know, Public Works, we need about 500,000 gallons a day. It's like, okay, because we've designed this the way we have, we can accommodate that in about 6 to 12 months. as opposed to, well, we don't really have that capacity and we have to build it in huge chunks out of these other facilities. We can kind of customize the capacity to be more just in time as it's needed.
This is one of those times in our conversation where I pretend like I knew what skid mounted mean, but I think you answered. So essentially it's a modular framework that allows you to just slide additional pieces into place, add or subtract as necessary, hopefully just adding, right? So you're not contracting, but it's in sharp contrast to the classic, like, hey, we need this giant circular spot. It's this incredible process to get it going. It's like, no. Get the, it's like the shipping container kind of model, right? Like but like bigger.
Yep. That's a much better way to describe it. Much more eloquent. It's just like you're sliding in as you need the new technology, and it's quick. It's straightforward. So
it allows for industrial development.
Yep. And so it's a really fundamentally shifting how we think about water renewal services and how we build the system out in the future. So for us, there's so many different benefits that come from recycled water. And that's one of the reasons we want to start pursuing it, is because there's these multiple benefits, as opposed to the typical way we do it is maybe it's the byproducts, but there's not a ton of other additional benefits that come from what we have done in the past over the past 75 years at wastewater treatment plants.
Here's kind of an analogous industry. When you're talking about public works and you're talking about these big investments, especially when you take into account large industrial users of water, who picks up the cost for those improvements? Because from the power industry, there's a huge wrangle over transmission lines, rate increases, things of this nature. There is no other competing water system in the city of Boise, right? You guys have a monopoly on that. Not in a nefarious way, but like you don't have a lot of different people trying to run pipes.
We're the only show in town.
So when you talk about developing industry and these different programs to take the pressure off, who's paying for that?
So state statute is crystal clear. There was a Supreme Court case, I can't remember how long ago it was, but it's a famous case called Haley versus Loomis. And it was basically, at the time, cities weren't necessarily having growth pay for growth, right? So that's the phrase that's kind of pounded in our head, that growth pays for growth. So how we do it is we have to build out, so the old model is the water renewal facilities. We build out capacity. And then as somebody connects to the system, they are required by law to pay a connection fee. They have to buy their portion of whatever we built.
Okay.
And so that goes for a restaurant, that goes for a residential, that goes for Micron, it goes for everybody.
Right.
They have to buy into the system and pay their fair share of that capacity. And there's a cost of service study that we do. It's a very technical evaluation, and that's how we and required by state to do that, to demonstrate that growth is paying for growth. They're buying into the system that is built.
Gotcha. So bottom line is, as new things are required to supply the water and waste system, as new things are required, the people that are requiring those pay for those. And that's not just with connection, but that's also like facilities.
Well, the facilities we have, we can't build a facility one house at a time, right?
Sure.
So we have to have capacity built out so that there's enough in the system for folks to buy into. So how we typically are sitting on, I don't know, however many million gallons a day of capacity that's been built out, and then people are buying into the system once they connect.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense.
Gotcha. So the bottom line is, you have the system that has capacity.
That's right.
Everybody with their rates pays for that system.
That's correct.
And as more people move in or more industry moves in, you do have to pay for the entire system. So that cost is socialized to a degree. So somebody living here 50 years ago, they're like, my water did not use, well, I don't know why I use that voice, but somebody's just saying, like, this is what the water cost 50 years ago. And this is what the water costs now. And you would probably say, and a part of that is inflation. And a part of it's like cost of living adjustment for our employees. And a part of it is also that we had to increase the size of the system to accommodate all the new people moving here. So you do have a degree of socialized cost distribution.
To a certain extent, but we are recouping that on the back end. Those people do have to buy into the system. And I think one of the challenges we have now, I know one of the challenges we have now is that we have, in the past, if I were to paint a picture, Matt, of 20 years ago, we'd have one big project that was a regulatory project, and we'd get that done. And then maybe 5 years later, we'd have, I don't know, another capacity project we had to get done. And then maybe 5 years from there, we had some other larger project that was another driver. But what we're experiencing today, and this is happening nationally, is that we're seeing these drivers all happen at the same time. So the systems that were built in response to either the Clean Water Act or even prior to the Clean Water Act are all starting to age out. So our Lander Street facility was built in 1950. We just had the 75-year anniversary of Lander Street. That facility was built with a bond that was passed by the League of Women Voters to address water quality concerns in the Boise River. It's done its job. It's done great work over 75 years. We have to completely replace that plant, right? That wasn't a cost that existed 20, 30 years ago.
But they were benefiting from the bond and the cost that somebody else dug the well and you benefited.
That's right. And so now we're in a situation with multiple drivers happening at the same time between needing to add capacity, a slow growing city. We still have regulatory requirements that we have to meet. And now we have the added challenge of aging infrastructure that needs to get replaced over time. So the Lander Street facility alone is a $400 to $500 million proposition, just that facility. And then once we're done replacing Lander Street, West Boise was built in 1976. That's our newer of the two facilities. So then probably 2050 timeframe is when we're going to have to start replacing West Boise. And that cycle of replacement was never, American cities are fairly young, right? We've only been around for a lot of cities, maybe 150, 100 years, where the infrastructure was built out. So now most cities are experiencing what we're experiencing. Some of the newer cities in the valley, like a Meridian or a Nampa, may not have those costs just yet because they're a younger city than us, or maybe their facilities weren't put in until like the 70s or 80s.
Right.
But those costs will be coming for them in the next 30 to 40 years. So one of the biggest challenges we have right now is just the number of big cost drivers happening at the same time. That's something that we've never really had to deal with, and most cities haven't had to deal with, but you're seeing it nationally.
Man, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
This is wild.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot. But again, like, this is all stuff that we dearly depend on every single day. Like, I don't know what I would do if I flushed the toilet and it didn't go away. I'd be like, oh no, this is a problem.
We take that. I mean, that's something that I'm probably most proud of as a director of public works, is just the passion with which our staff does their work. Yeah. And how we consider ourselves the vanguard of the river. We are in charge of protecting that river, and we take that job very seriously. It's not a simple thing. It's 24/7. There's no such thing as a no flush Friday. We joke like there's like it's coming every day, every hour. Where we don't shut it down.
There's no flush Friday, but there is a Taco Tuesday.
There is a Taco Tuesday, but there's no flush Friday. So one, I think, is we take the protection of the river very seriously. We try to be as proactive as we can. We're not waiting around for a crisis. The recycled water program is a great example. We've had folks say, well, and actually have asked me, like, Steve, we're not in a crisis. Why are you starting a recycled water program? I don't want to wait for the crisis. I want to get ahead of that. So one of the things we take great pride in is trying to be proactive and seeing out what's coming. I feel like it's my responsibility, working for the city of Boise, to see what's coming and project that out and prepare for those futures. And a lot of times it's a hedge against some really bad things, right? There's a risk cost of drought conditions on the Boise River. If we don't start thinking about recycled water in the valley and recharge, if we're not ahead of this thing 50, 60 years from now, and we know the drought conditions are going to get worse, shame on us that we weren't proactive. I'm happy that we are. That's kind of how we roll. And so thinking about 40, 50 years from now, we want to be prepared.
God bless it, man. Listen, I know today's a working day. You very kindly came in and took the time to talk about this. Is there anything you'd really like to add here at the end?
Yeah, I just really appreciate the interest, because a lot of the work that happens at a public works department in a city is it just happens, right? And people don't think about it, whether it's the trash, whether it's water, whether it's climate. These things just kind of happen. And I think people just assume I don't think people give much thought to it, right? You take a shower in the morning, it goes away.
Yeah.
Good. So it's nice to have folks like yourself that are interested to learn more, Because the more folks understand what we do and the big cost drivers, the better I think we'll be as a community understanding why we're doing what we're doing. So
I am taken constantly by like the miracle of today. That's like, you look at like, just if somebody wants to make their head hurt, just try to wrap your head around the logistics of Amazon Prime same day delivery.
Yeah.
Like, like I can't. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's a newer one. Like people understand you have a certain stock of things and you deliver. It's like, okay, fine. But you go down to things like this where these are so fundamental and they're so precious. And I think what happens ultimately in my mind is we've become, you know, like you hear people saying you're removed from your food system. You don't understand a chicken, right? Or like the cow or whatever. Yep. I mean, here's one. Like I went to a dairy about a couple months ago, and I learned things about the dairy industry that flew in the face of what I had been told about dairy. I was like the whole organic milk, market, and we never give our cows antibiotics, and I find out that they test at every level of that dairy for antibiotics. And if there's any trace of antibiotics in any of the milk supply, they scrap the whole, they lose like 40,000 gallons and they have to scrub the tanks and they like all this stuff, right? Now, mind you, that makes sense that it's like, okay, yeah, they don't want antibiotics in it either. Yeah. But the idea, it's like, well, our cows never had antibiotics. Okay, one of my kids had antibiotics when he's 3. He's 13 now. Am I supposed to know that think he's like tainted as a human? It's like traces of the Ricamaya, whatever, because he had a, pink eye or something. Like, I have no idea how all of that works, but you find out things and you're like, oh my God, the system by which we get dairy is so wildly complex and important. And we as individuals are removed from it and we get taken by messaging that when you see the reality, same thing with this. Well, like there's so much there.
And the way the systems interact, we got Idaho Power that provides us the power here to do the podcast. They provide the power to our facilities. Then we have the drinking water system that Veolia operates and sends the used water to us and the water renewal system. And how those systems all interact and rely on one another. It's fascinating. It's one of the reasons I love my job because it gets real complicated real quick. And one of the things that on the infrastructure side of the house, you can't get to what you were describing about the milk. It's like if you really start to think about this stuff, you'll almost be paralyzed because it's so complicated. So you just got to keep kind of above the fray and keep a bigger picture vision for where you think you need to go. There's certainly the day-to-day operations that need to happen, and they do happen. But I think it's the fun part of the job is really trying to think about these systems and how they interact and where they're headed in the future.
Yes, I agree. And the future is the thing I worry about. Yeah. You're obviously successful today. What I worry about is the future when things have become so complex and people are so removed that when you come forth and you're like, hey, Boise, and I don't even live in Boise, but it's like, hey, we need X number of dollars to add this thing into our skid, the skid system. And people, because they don't know anything about it and it's so complex, they're like, wait, no, I'm not going along. Like, first off, I don't want a rate increase. I don't want a taxing. Forget this. I don't even know what he's a skid. What is he? A Bobcat driver, right? Like, what is he?
We're obliged. Like, that's such a good point. We're obliged as the city of Boise and Public Works to be reaching out. This is an opportunity to do that, to educate folks on what we do. We also ask our community, hey, what is it that you expect of us? And we have, long story, but back in 2020, when we passed this big kind of visionary plan, it was predicated primarily on feedback we got from citizens, from an advisory group of citizens that we formed and met with 6 months. It is not for me to say what we ought to be doing. It's for me to frame to the community what some of the challenges are in the future, lay out some of the options, but hear from them what they expect of us. So that if I'm going back to them and saying, hey, by the way, I haven't talked to you at all, you know nothing about me, and I need a big rate increase, shame on me.
Sure.
Right? So the community is, like, they're such an important part of this, and we try our best. We have a lot of ways we try to reach them. We just had, for our recycled water program, we had a water quality advisory group. We had 6 months with that group of just sitting down and saying, we just need you to understand some of the trade-offs that we have facing us on some costs and water quality. And we want to pick your brain over the next 6 months, get you educated on the kind of the nitty-gritty of it. and then come at the end with a conclusion that then we can take to mayor and council saying, hey, we had this advisory group of citizens. They got educated on the issues, and here's what we're hearing back from them. And that's how it's driving some of our decision making. So these opportunities, like a podcast like this, is really powerful, right? Because we have an opportunity to frame issues to citizens, important issues. This stuff is expensive. We want their feedback. It's not for me to dictate the terms. It's for me to listen and understand what the community is willing to pay for. And it's what's interesting is I think in Boise, we hear often it's not about least cost. It's about value. So we can put a open space levy on the ballot, get 75% approval. We can put a water renewal bond on the ballot, get 81% approval. So Boiseans are willing to pay a little bit more if they can see the value on the back end. It's not necessarily about least cost, it's about best value. And so when we start framing things from that context, citizens can give us feedback, and they'll often tell us what they're willing to pay a little bit more for. And so that's what we're trying to hit this sweet spot with water renewal services in particular.
Steve, I appreciate you, sir. I really, really appreciate the time. I appreciate all the explanation. Yeah. I'd love to have you back on, and we can keep the conversation going about the other things that you guys do, because I know dealing with the stream coming out is just one of the pieces for you guys.
Yeah.
But again, thank you for the time today, and let's do this again.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Matt.